Now, you probably heard a lot about sheep being dumb and how they, I heard one yuppie say that a sheep isn't much smarter than this pencil that they had in their hand. Yeah, so we're going to talk about that. Sheep never want to appear smart when they're in front of you, because they know if they do something that seems rather smart that you're going to deliberately try and fix it up and stop it. I've noticed something, that when a sheep's hanging around a fence and with its lamb or on its own, and it looks sort of a bit like something's going to happen, what it actually is there's a hole in the fence and they're trying to get through that hole. But they'll never do it when they know you're watching. And as long as you stand there, they're not going to go through that fence. So I could often see them from the house, and if I saw something was going on, I'd be out there and I'd go, have a look, sort of thing, saying to myself, what's going on here? They're going to do something. And they'd look up and they'd see me there, and they wouldn't do it. I'd be hundreds of metres away, but they'd still be able to see me. And they wouldn't do anything. And if you're inside and you're looking out through the glass, they also usually won't do anything. But what I used to do is, there's a particular hole in a certain place, and it was near a part of the house that didn't have many windows. And the window that was there had a blind that I could just, not one like the Venetian, but like the pull down from the top sort of blind. And so what I'd do is I'd close the door and I'd pull down the blind, and then through the little hole where you got like your, there's a little slot in them so you can grab the bit of rod in the bottom to pull them down, and I'll be sort of glancing through that. I'd actually have to put my head more or less on top of a microwave, and I'd watch them through that. You keep watching them, and within 5 to 10 minutes, usually no more than about 3 minutes, they would make a go for bowling through that hole in the fence. So you catch them in the act. There's another one I want to talk about that turned up in the newspaper over here a number of years ago. And we actually got the cutting out, and my mum went and put it in the local sheep sale yard's notice board. And what it was these sheep in northern England, can't remember the town or anything like that, I don't even think it had the town, kept getting out, and they had like a cattle grid, because you got the same thing for sheep. Well, some people have the same thing for sheep. Now some sheep are smart enough that you can have a cattle grid, and they can just perfectly place their little feet and walk over the cattle grid. So you got to have like a thinner one or whatever for sheep sometimes. But yeah, some of the cattle grids, certain brands and whatnot, certain widths and everything, they can work out how to sort of just tiptoe over them, or get right near the corner of them, and then they only got to stand over one or two, or make a bit of a jump, if you haven't set them up correctly, so they go through the actual, with an actual gate over the top of them. So what was happening was they had one of those grids, and these sheep just kept getting out all the time. There's no holes in the fences. It may have been an area with stone fences, and they just couldn't stop them from getting out. And they're thinking, what the hell's going on here? We come back, every time there's like 14 or so out in the road. Well, the postman was going along, and he heard a bit of commotion and that, and he just thought, I'll just shut up here and I'll just keep quiet, turn the car off or whatever. And he watched. And what was happening is, you may have heard of army rolls. They're more properly known as barrel rolls. And these barrel rolls that, you see some of the special forces and that doing, the sheep had worked out how to sort of take a bit of a slight, a little bit of a run up towards the grid, then sort of drop down on their side and do a barrel roll and roll over the grid while they tuck their feet against their stomach, roll over the grid, and then they'd come out on the other side, and then they'd stand back up again, and they'd be out. and they were always out on the side of the road eating all this grass. And that's what they were doing. They got that smart that they'd realised that if they tuck their feet, take a bit of a run up and a dive down, a drop down, and tuck their feet up under their belly, which is the way they usually sit down when they sit down out in the paddock, the momentum of having a little run up would continue to roll them over the grid, and then when they're on the other side they just stand up. You know, and later on they'd all get flaming grumbled at, and somebody coming out with a bit of plywood or something and lay it on part of the grid and then get them back inside again. Or, you know, put them in the back of a ute or a truck or whatever and take them back inside. But yeah, that was the what was going down. So to think they're stupid, they ain't as stupid as they want you to think they are. They ain't as stupid as yuppies like to think they are. They're smart, but they make a really good attempt not to show it in front of you, because you know, they know, rather, that if they do get seen doing something, that the human is going to fix it up and stop them from doing it by changing the fence or changing something, so they make sure they don't do it in front of you. And then it gives the idea that they're dumb because you never see them do anything smart in front of you. But they only do the smart things when you're not there, so that you don't fix the problem. That's also how smart they are, to know that if they do anything in front of you, you're going to fix it up. They work that one out rather quickly. So yeah, you know, they're not quite as dumb as you suspect. There's another stunt they've been doing on me on occasion, and that is they'll put you near a tree or something like that, and they'll walk down near a tree, and then they'll go and walk around the tree, and you're behind them a little ways, and then you sort of see them walk down near the tree, and then you think, oh, you go around. So you go around the tree, and little do you realise they've worked out that once you're down against a tree and your vision's blocked, they're more or less around the other side of the tree, and then they start running flat out, so that by the time you clamber around this tree or this bush, you haven't seen them run away, and then they've run off in the other direction and stuffed you up again. They're great things like that. The other one is they run themselves into real hard areas that you might find it hard to walk through, but they don't, because you've got little tiny feet, little hooves. They can go on these really narrow tracks, and so they do something real smart, like walk through heavy rocks and that, and then they start walking out the other side, and they wait till you're in the middle of these, you know, large rocks and stuff everywhere, and, you know, no decent place to walk, or a real steep area or something like that. And then once you're stuck in the middle of it, then they double back on you and flame and run right back around you, and you're sitting there, stop you bastards! And they've gone like right past you, but they've got to make sure that they sort of draw you into an area that's very steep or full of rocks or hard for you to get around, and then they go out the other side of that area into flatter ground or whatever, and then once you're, and they keep walking slow, but once you're in the middle of this steep or rocky area that's hard for you to manoeuvre, and they see you're slowing up, then they'll run back around it and back out in the paddock. And they do all this sort of stuff when you're trying to hurt them up. They're not too stupid. They also realise sometimes that you get a bit smart and think, well, I'm not going to walk in that area. And then you're sitting there, you know, going, I'm not going to be bored into these rocks again, I'm not that stupid. So you're on the other side of the rocks yelling and clapping and carrying on, and trying to get them to keep moving out the other side, and they're just standing there looking at you like, what are you doing? What are you looking at? Sort of a thing. And what they're waiting for you to do is get sick of them not moving, and then once you're sick of them not moving, you'll go, bugger it, I'll flame and get you now. So then you run into the rocks to, you know, start getting closer to them, because your yelling and clapping obviously isn't hurting them properly. And so they just stand there, and they realise that you're dumb enough that you'll go walking into this big bunch of rocks because you're sick of, you know, them just standing there, and you're yelling and clapping obviously and doing something. So you're going, bugger this, I'll get you to bloody move. So you go running up the path trying to flame and, you know, get them to move, and as you're crawling up a blooming steep patch full of mud and flaming rocks on a real, you know, bit where you're slipping backwards faster than you're going forwards, that's when they'll double back on you again. You know, they're real they're not that stupid, you know, they're good at sabotaging your efforts to round them up. Times we've spent, you know, an hour and a half to round them up, and other times one day they were out there for about 4 hours because they were too smart, and they had one there that was a real sod. And one will get in the front of the herd and sort of act more or less as a leader, and if that leader is a real smart sod, which it was one of my uncle's sheep that had jumped the fence, then, oh man, all hell would break loose, because they'd deliberately try and outrun you. But because they're the front of the pack, the rest of the pack would be following them, and, you know, it just turned to chaos. They're real smart at not getting flaming, you know, cornered and this and that. And I don't know if it's, you know, something they learn from us, or like, you know, learn from their observations of how humans herd us up or something like that. But this whole idea they're dumb, oh no, they're sort of relatively smart, you know. They probably worked it out from their observations of us herding us up, and they may have worked it out from foxes and stuff, hassling them and that, but probably more worked it out from us, because, as you know, foxes are also way more nimble than we are, and foxes are also terribly cunning as well. And dare I say it, Foxy may be smarter than Barlam. Actually, I'd be quite sure of that, to be honest. But yeah, it's a bit on how dumb sheep actually aren't.